So we'll be starting in a couple minutes. Can you all hear us? If you can hear us, please raise your hand in the chat. Cool. We're going to give it a couple more minutes, then we'll start up. All right, so we're going to start now, and people can trickle in as they trickle in. So for this month's webinar, we're going to talk about a very important topic and one that everyone should already be working on, but as we kind of enter and pass the halfway point for a lot of people, it's time to start really talking about sustainability, which is a super important topic for us. So today we're going to talk about building a legacy binder. And so here's our agenda. First, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability and what that means in a Vista context, and then specifically dive into a legacy binder and like items you can put into it and things to think about for it. And then we're going to announce our AmeriCorps Week raffle winners. So thank you all for posting during AmeriCorps Week. It was awesome seeing the posts, and we'll announce the winners there. And then we have a bunch of housekeeping stuff to go over. So that's like the basic gist of the webinar today. So first, we're going to start with a question. So what did you wish you knew when you started service at your host site? So if you want to type that in text or raise your hand and we can unmute you, I want to hear people share like what things they wish they had known when they started that they didn't. No one wants to share today?
Alexis says that she wishes she had known how early on in the startup phase her host site was. Alexis is in kind of a different position because there's never been a Vista before her. So she obviously doesn't have a legacy binder, and her organization is new. So she kind of got double whammied, but think of how much more important it will be for you to be leaving something, whether or not you're having a Vista Day next year, for staff or volunteers who take over those roles.
One second.
Mark says that he wishes he knew how to manage his manager. Mark, I have news for you. There is an AmeriCorps webinar sometime this month on managing up. So that is a great resource if you want to check it out. And it's like how to deal with the Vista supervisor relationship. So, and then you could pass along whatever information you do get from that webinar, or even the fact that there is that webinar and it is recorded on Vista Campus in your legacy binder.
Let's see. Jennifer says she wished she had a greater understanding of all the side projects that would pop up. So those are really important things to like mention and kind of like have the person think about all the possible things they might be doing. Ashley, how to deal with community partners that don't communicate well. That's a huge one. So like having people, like having basically an idea of like who are your reliable contacts and who you might not work as frequently with are great. Maddie has one that should be in everyone's legacy binder, so the names and roles of everyone in the office and the past activities that this is used. A lot of this, I wish I knew how to do everything. So Rachel wishes she had a better timeline of the year for what was happening in the near future instead of scrambling to complete something last minute. So yeah, that like the building capacity part of a legacy binder can really help with that. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. So talking about sustainability and what that means in our context. So it's the ability of a program or organization to continue engaging community stakeholders to meet the needs of the community efficiently and effectively after the Vista project has ended at the site. So as you all know, or should know, Vista positions are not meant to be permanent. So there should not be a Vista at a site for like 20 years. Like they're meant to be there for a set amount of time, build capacity, and then leave with the organization having learned those lessons and having that ability to continue their work. So that's why sustainability is so critical to us, because we're not meant to be permanent residents of an area. And so we measure success a lot by the ability for you to leave your site, but that work to continue with minimal interruption. And so here we're going to do our first kind of gut check for everyone. So I'm going to launch a poll here. 1 second. Oh, I'm launching it now. Okay. So basically asking you how you feel about the sustainability of your projects right now. Give it like 10 more seconds. So it looks like around 27% of us, so a quarter of us, are in that like sweet spot of having sustainable projects that they know could continue without their involvement. About half of us are in the phase where they're like, it could be sustainable, but I need to do a little bit more work. And then the rest of people are like, if I was not there, everything I did would like crumble to the ground. So we want to get everybody to that first option of their projects being sustainable without their involvement. So how do we do that? So I found this neat little image of a program sustainability stool, and it kind of has all the aspects of what you need in a program to be sustainable. So program capacity is just basically are the structures there. So are there the forms in place to continue the project? Are there like protocols to use? is there like a strong foundation? Communications capacity, so is there a plan to fit that program into place in the broader sense of the organization, and are the goals clearly articulated to stakeholders, paid staff, volunteers, and like the intended audience? So the financial capacity is an obvious one. Is there money to fund the project? Human capacity, are there people to actually do the work in maintaining the project? And kind of the community and stakeholders serve as that like glue tying everything together. So when a Vista leaves the site, whether they're leaving the Vista project over or new Vista is coming in, that human capacity leg is kind of in a iffy spot for a little bit. So we want to make sure that we build out all those other legs strong enough to stand without that human capacity for however long it needs to do that. So here are some things that you might want to transfer. So transferring knowledge is probably the biggest one. A huge way you could do that is with asset maps. So like kind of creating a kind of visual idea of like all the things in your community that you need to like interact with on your daily basis to make your programs run. So evaluating the impact and sharing the stories of those events or programs that you're running is also hugely important. And just a big way to do this is have a presentation near the end of your service with community partners, staff, that kind of like details what you've done and what needs to be in place for you to continue those projects to continue once you are gone. So, and a lot of this is leading me on the written documentation, so like how-tos, a page that has the logins and passwords that you need to use on a regular basis. That's hugely useful. That's something from my legacy binder that I use all the time. Is just the login information. That's knowledge. So we also need to transfer products. So these are kind of the tools of the trade. So like a product that we do that needs to be sustainable is our weekly update. So how to transfer those products to the next person to make sure they continue the work that's created. And then like kind of how like the hierarchy of the importance of those products and just everything about like just making things work. So like so when I plan on leaving, I plan on writing a guide on how to use Canva, like basic Canva knowledge, because me and Zakia use Canva to make nearly all of our graphics. And it's a really easy tool to use, and I want to basically provide some like pointers on like best practices for it. And then transferring relationships is a huge one that's really difficult to do if you do not do it right, because if you're the only person in your organization that is talking to a community partner or someone else and you leave and you haven't done anything to set that relationship up or tee it off for the next person, then you're kind of losing a ton of work and potentially like hurting the relationship between your organization and that person. So it's really, really important to leave your contacts behind for either another Vista or for paid staff or volunteers at your organization. And also communicate your timeline. So like you should let people know when your service ends and then who they'll be talking with once that service ends. Because if you don't do that, you're going to leave people kind of out of the loop, and it's going to really, really hurt those relationships. And then some stuff that we should think of more carefully about is transferring sensitive information. So you should prepare the next person to succeed in the workplace or the service site, and that can sometimes take the form of being negative, but you really, really, really want to avoid being overly negative about a relationship with someone. You want to try and like avoid making subjective judgments about, like if someone you work with frequently like really sucks and they're really unreliable and you hate them, you don't want to kind of set the next person off on the wrong foot with them immediately by kind of expressing that. So it's like fine to say like, hey, this person kind of might need more direction on projects, or they might take a little bit longer to respond to an email. That's kind of fine. That sets the next person up to be successful and to kind of expect those things. But saying like they suck and they're the worst, kind of immediately potentially tarnishing relationship that could be good for the next person.
And it can tarnish your relationship. Like if you're going to ask for a letter of recommendation or a reference from someone at this organization, and then that person sees that you wrote negative things, not even about them, but about someone else, like how unprofessional does that look? So things that we have suggested in the past, we had a Vista, well, when I was a Vista at Delta College, we had one staff member who would request Vista help all of the time. And the second you said yes to one of the projects, they just jumped on you for everything. And so that was not part of the legacy binder, but when I went over the legacy binder with my supervisor, she made a point to inform me of that so it wasn't in writing, but that I still got that information. So they can kind of be cues to have conversations, to learn more about people also. And then we had a Vista at Alma College that worked really closely with Campbell Scholars, who were like students from Detroit who were going to Alma, and she had a lot of very personal information about them that she wanted to keep confidential. And when she was handing the program off, she talked to her supervisor about some of the concerns that she had about the students and what was going on in their lives. And that way, if anything had happened, she didn't have to put that information in writing or break that student's trust, but someone was informed about what was going on, and the new person would have some of that background if they needed it.
All right, so now that we've gone over kind of a little bit of sustainability, we're going to jump into legacy binders, and we're going to start with 2 questions. So the first question is going to be, just have you started creating your legacy binder? Hoping this is more yeses than nos.
If I went on a site visit with you, you better have started it so far, because I have put it in every single one of your recaps, just so you don't forget.
Yeah, legacy binder is not something to just like think about during the last month of your service. You should ideally be building it out through the entire year, because that will create the best finished product for whoever is reading it next. Looks like about 2/3 of people have started creating their legacy binders. So hopefully, by the end of this presentation, everyone will have steps in place or ideas for how they can create their legacy binder. And then the second question I have is, the legacy binder that I was given is useful. So this is one to kind of see about how useful, if you received a legacy binder, it was for your service. And so most people were not left a legacy binder. So would someone who, let's take a 6 sentence and say agree or strongly agree. So would someone who likes their legacy binder, like, share with us either text or raise your hand and we can unmute you about why you liked it and what you thought was strong in it? All right, with someone who disagreed with their legacy binder, would they like to kind of express what they thought could have been better or what was weak about it that they would like to improve on? Because this is a really good chance, if you disagree, to leave something behind that's really, really strong for the next person and kind of like learn from what you weren't able to learn. So Curtis says that legacy binders at Washington Literacy are digital and stored in a Vista-only portion of our website, making it highly mobile and usable. So we'll talk about tools for that. So I plan on making a mostly digital legacy binder because I don't really use paper that much, and I don't think there's that much use in it for me personally. Let's see. Mark disagrees, but it's used for one section of his VAD, so that was some use. Ashley liked that they left community partners projects that they worked on and contact people for each project, and it was very organized. So those are very, very strong, good things to have in a legacy binder. All right, so it looks like the final numbers. So about of the people who had a legacy binder, it looks like mostly people disagreed with the legacy binder was useful, but a couple people did agree that it was. So we have a lot of work to do here, and we can make sure that for next year, these are all agrees and strongly agrees for this question. All right. So a strong legacy binder will increase the program outputs for your site because it will decrease the time that a new person or staff has to acclimate and reinvent the wheel for the next person. So there's a learning, so Vista period is just 1 year, and a lot of that time is spent learning what you're actually doing. So the less time that is spent doing that, the more people that can be reached and the stronger our outputs become. And it should also answer questions that an incoming person will have, as well as questions that they may not have even thought to ask. So information that people might not think in the first couple weeks, but you can like kind of clue them in that, hey, this is important and this is something that you should be thinking about. So a legacy binder is an introduction to your service, not from the Corporate International and Community Service, not from a supervisor, but from someone who actually did the work for a whole year, which is it can be a very different perspective than all those other perspectives that an incoming person will get. So it's your opportunity to share your perspective on what you did and kind of insider knowledge to get someone caught up. And it's an opportunity to reflect both for you now and also the next person on what was successful and what wasn't successful and how that person can kind of avoid those pitfalls. Also, in terms of like a selfish goal, a legacy binder is a really good source of material for a job interview portfolio. So at our leadership development training, Ryan talked about like having your portfolio, and a lot of the content you want to include in a portfolio is also stuff you want to include in a legacy binder for the next person. So you kind of think of it in a selfish aspect where you're compiling all your really cool stuff that you made, so that you have it in one place that you can then take it and use whatever you want with it, but also the next person is getting a chance to see it. And it's a really, really one of the strongest capacity building tools we have between years of service. And it should be a tool for a Vista to use throughout the entire service year, not just in the beginning. So I was telling Baker this the other day, I still use the legacy binder I was given for supervisor emails because I don't email supervisors all that frequently and I don't like have their emails memorized. So I still open mine every once in a while just to like look at those contact information. And it can be either physical or digital. And your audience for it. So this will change depending on whether you're a returning host site or whether or not Vista is going to be there or whatever. So your audience could be a Vista member, a supervisor, or just the host site in general and potential community partners. So you really want to tailor parts of your legacy binder to who your audience is going to be. So like some information, if you don't know Vista returning, and you might need to write a section on office culture because people that are going to be reading your legacy binder already know the office cultures because they've been there. And it's really important too to think about who's going to be taking on that work that you've been doing. So whether that be a new Vista, a volunteer, or a paid staff member. So organizing your legacy binder. I've been using OneNote to organize mine. So OneNote's a really cool tool that kind of like incorporates all the other Microsoft Office programs into it, and I've been kind of using that as like an organizational tool for my own personal binder. But you can make it a physical binder, you can make it a digital binder, so if your host site has like a drive, you can save it somewhere on there. You can use Google Drive if your host site doesn't have a location to save stuff, or you can just put it on a USB. And you should do, and whatever path you decide to take, you should make sure that it is readable and it is like easily navigable. Because if a new person opens your legacy binder and it's a huge mess of documents that has no organization, they're not going to spend much time kind of wanting to put that together and figure that out. And after this webinar, I have a couple of good example legacy binders that I'm going to email out to everybody. So that'll give you another like concrete example to look at and tailor your own off of. So now we're going to go into a big list of things you might want to consider for a legacy binder. So during this, if one of these particularly speaks out to you or something that's really important for you personally, please either raise your hand or type something into the chat and we can like talk about it a little bit more. The first is every legacy binder should have a welcome letter. So kind of if a host site's returning, get the new Vista excited to start service. So like, it's a chance to kind of like really like congratulate them, like, hey, you've chosen to do a year of service is a really cool thing you've chosen. This is a really exciting site, and here's all the cool things you'll be doing. Like, get someone hyped to start service.
Dylan was left a welcome letter.
Yep.
From Mary.
My welcome letter was great. It was like, you're going to be working a lot of long hours, but it's all worth it in the end. So I think it really put me in the right mindset to start my service, and it kind of was a very nice introduction to everything. So office culture stuff can be really important. So someone will learn this through their supervisor, their on-site orientation, but like minor stuff, like I remember when I first started, I didn't know we had casual Friday. So I came in like my first Friday dressed up normally, and I was like, oh, everyone's dressed casually, like we have casual Friday. So stuff like that, office events that people do, like how casual is the office? So is everyone walking around in jeans all the time, in t-shirts, or is it business casual? Kind of set them up to succeed in the office place, because nearly everyone has these like faux pas or mistakes they make when they're adjusting to a new workplace. So kind of try to minimize that as much as possible. Does anyone have like a really interesting like office culture thing that they weren't prepared for when they started service?
Curtis says that they don't have an office at Washington Literacy. Yeah. I think that is a great thing. I mean, like, that's still part of office culture to say, like, you will spend a lot of your time in this office, and because we are so in the community, that can oftentimes be isolating. And then maybe that means that when everyone does get together, there's so much like more energy and excitement to see people because people have been working alone.
I think that's a really good point too. The flexibility of having students coming in and out of the office wanting to talk. So that's something to prepare for. Like how often are they communicating within the office, and how often are people like students walking in to talk with you? So like basically like at M&A here, I mostly work with Zakia and Maggie, and there are other people in the office I communicate with, but for specific things. So like that's important to note. Being like, hey, this is this person. You'll talk with them about this issue, and that's pretty much it. Or like, hey, you'll be collaborating with your other Vista leader a whole lot. Like, it can help to kind of like give someone a really like good floor plan of how the office works.
With that too, like building off of what Maddie said, when I was at Delta College, because of the role that I was in, I was able to have more casual relationships with students, and so students confided in me about a lot of things, and it kind of made me uncomfortable because I was like, this is not stuff that I want to know about you. And so I was talking to my supervisor, and she was like, this is so important. They cannot tell me this because I am their boss. This is so important for them to have someone, and really encouraged me to like allow them to have that space and that person that was kind of more in a role of authority, but also could be more of like a mentor and a peer support. So that is not something that I would have. That wasn't something that was included in the legacy binder. I don't know if that's how like normal colleges work or Vista rules in colleges work. My guess is it's not, or it's different based on like what department in school you're in. So that information too, like what do those relationships look like?
So Amethyst says that their office sits down every day, and eats lunch together. If you're the first one to see that it's lunch, you should go around and let people know. So kind of like, yeah, so is your office really close-knit like that? Like that's a really cool thing and like something to prepare the next person for. And Jennifer says that their hours are really all over the place, and they tend to have meetings in less formal settings. That's both for Vistas and the permanent staff. And it means you do a lot more communication via email. So like, that's also really good to know. Like, how do people in the office communicate? Is there a lot of like, hey, you can just like jump into my office and have a conversation with me, or is it like you need to send me an email and then we'll set up a conversation after? This was a lot of like making people not have to make like mistakes during their beginning of service.
There are so many people that don't understand email etiquette. So if you are in like a very email heavy workplace, including a template, including template emails, including like tips and tricks on how to email or things not to email, can be really important. Even if you think that it is common knowledge, I can tell you right now, it is not, and it will make life for the next VISTA, if they have those, they don't have those skills, so much easier.
So Curtis mentions that it can be difficult to know the difference in stakeholders and how you should act accordingly between them all. So yeah, leaving the next person kind of a heads up on like who these important people are and like how you should approach them can be really, really useful. And Rachel has, a lot of her events are time sensitive, and unless she is told that she needed to start seriously working on it, I was in the dark about what needed to be done to complete it. So yeah, kind of like keeping these things in mind. So the next one we have, so kind of your tools of the trade. So I listed all the like websites that me and Zaki use on a regular basis here. So we use MailChimp to send you all the weekly updates, we use Canva to make graphics, we use Weebly for our website, SurveyMonkey to give you guys surveys after events, and Cvent for our QPR stuff. So like if you use something a lot for a specific reason, include that in your legacy binder. So it's like, hey, we use Weebly to manage our website. Here's like a link to a YouTube tutorial about how Weebly works, and here are some things that I found useful or didn't find useful about that particular tool. And along with that, logins. So all those things have different logins, and it's really nice to have like one singular place where I can keep track of how to log into all the different tools that we use on a regular basis. Next one. So demystifying your host site's lingo and acronyms. So I listed here, I think, a lot of the acronyms that I did not know when I started service here, except for maybe M&A. I probably knew that one. But host sites, and everyone uses a ton of lingo, and it can be really confusing coming to a place and everyone's speaking in acronyms, and you have no idea what's being said. And so kind of like producing or providing a chart that kind of like lists out like, hey, this is what these things mean, is really, really useful. And there's in your binders that we gave you in orientation, there's a page for you to do that. So kind of leave a list of like commonly used acronyms just so someone knows that like when someone's talking about like, oh, like CAPCAN, what CAPCAN actually is and what it means. Then we're having like really interesting acronyms that their host site uses that they had never heard before. I love acronyms, so it's fun to learn about other people.
Something that's really gotten me this year is MCSC, and I knew it beforehand, the Michigan Community Service Commission, but there's also the Michigan Civil Service Commission, and my partner works for the state, and so he says MCSC all the time, and I'm like, what are you doing working with them? So sometimes, like, when acronyms can mean more than one thing, too, like, how do you learn to differentiate between those? Or, like, something else that I've noticed with Trisha's site is National Economic Alliance, and I keep reading it Michigan Education Association all the time. It took me a long time to differentiate between the two, and I have to, like, remind myself, like, oh, you're not reading about the Education
Looks like,
Association.
Mark, you had your hand raised. We can unmute you. You should be unmuted now. You're talking, we cannot hear you.
Oh, now can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Oh no, so my work organization, there's like 4 different programs that at my host site, so they literally had like a whole like 4-page list of all the acronyms that they use, and I use like 5 of them. But yeah, I put that in my Vista binder for like the next year because it's all acronyms here. I have no idea sometimes.
Yep.
I still don't know. Like,
yeah, most so like there were a lot of acronyms I had to learn when I came in and like Maggie and Zaki were talking about host sites, and I was like, I have no idea who like these people are. So kind of like providing those tools. So the next one we have are your wonderful, wonderful program forms that we ask you all to fill out. So everyone struggles with filling these out when they start. It really helps if the next person has an example of, hey, like include your like timesheet so that someone can look at it and be like, oh, hey, this is what I do to fill it out. This is how this works. Or another big one is monthly reports. I think Melissa mentioned that she was left just the monthly reports, but leaving like your monthly reports behind an easily accessible location helps people both learn how to write them, because we ask you to do a really weird kind of writing style for those. And it also gives people a good idea of like what you were doing at a given time. So that can be really helpful to know like, hey, in this month, these are the projects that I'm working on, and this is what they were also working on last year. So like leaving those behind. Also, stuff like your time off site forms, like PD request forms, like those other forms that we ask you to email us, leave some examples behind so the next person can kind of see and have a good idea of what they can, how they can use those documents effectively. Another big one is just materials you've created. So like make your own mini portfolio of stuff that you have made during the year that the next person can either use, reuse, or maybe alter in a minor way to be effective. So like our blog of the week thing is just we make a quote, we drag a picture in. It's very easy to use, it's a very good template document, and it looks really good. So that's something to leave behind, like just materials you've created and like to either provide examples or for people to reuse. Next, so contact list. So this should be a huge one. Every single one of you should include a contact list in your legacy binder, regardless of whether another Vista is coming in or the work's being taken over by a volunteer or paid staff. So this is like a huge, 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 huge important thing. So include people's names, their title, their email address, their phone number, and stuff like, do people like prefer, like I prefer to be emailed rather than called. Like if someone has preferences, make those known so that the next person can kind of take over and do those most effectively. And like include their role and their relationship with the work you've been doing. So like if you work with, like Zakia is the primary person I work with, so like I would include, hey, you're going to work with the other Vista a whole lot, so like that's going to be your primary collaboration partner. But like once again, going back, like people in your office and what they do and how to contact them. And then another thing you can do is, if your host site's coming back, get a chance to look at the VAD for the next person if you can, and the performance measures, and have like really decode those for the next person, because VADs, by their like nature, are really like, they have to be kind of concise and they can be kind of lingo-y. So like go over like what the roles of those things are. So like for instance, this is part of like my VAD. So I help recruit, screen, select Vista candidates, and when I came in, I was like, I had an idea of what that was, but it was still kind of just like one sentence, and there's a whole lot that's like buried in that one sentence. So kind of like, even like maybe like a Word document, take like the different VAD activities and like explain more detail what each of those actually means. It can be really useful for the next person. So lessons learned. So everyone makes mistakes during the course of their service, and things don't go well, or an event doesn't go as planned, or something comes up and like makes something not go as well as you wanted it to. And like including information on those lessons learned and how to avoid them in the future is really, really important for making sure a program capacity gets built, and that those like pitfalls don't have to happen every year as a new person comes in and makes the same mistakes over and over again. So kind of trying to include like ways to actually succeed in a particular thing. Along with that, we have including debriefs or postmortems for events. So postmortems are really, really good. I really like them because when I was in college, we had to do them for all of our group projects. We had to do a like huge postmortem after it, and they're really, really effective in helping you learn from your mistakes and also making sure other people don't make the same mistake. So if there's like a signature event that your organization puts on and the next Vista will be putting on. So like an example, Rachel has events that she's going to put on that I think the next person is also going to be putting on. So like taking the time to kind of reflect after an activity and writing about lessons learned and how things went, like what was the venue that you used, if you got catering, who was it from, was it good, and all that like information can really, really help the next person kind of avoid any, like, smooth over any potential things that could pop up.
Trish also does it. Trish is not, was not able to make it today. Otherwise, I would have her talk about this. But in her supervisor's office, they have a big like SWOT analysis of the last event that they had, and so they go over all of the strengths, like all of the challenges, all of the things that they want to do better. And sometimes, I mean, it's not always terrible. It's just like, oh, get like more food that people like. I think the kid said that it was old people food, which I'm not really sure what that means, but they wanted hot dogs and hamburgers. So like figuring out some of that stuff, and then it's just staying up as they like start planning the fall version of that as a reminder. It's on this big flip chart paper of everything that they wanted to improve and everything that went really well that they know now that they do not want to touch.
So we also have asset maps. So these are really important to include. This is a very confusing example, but basically establishing a way, like a means or how everything that you do is connected within each other. So like every one of us is working in a very interconnected ecosystem, and kind of naming and showing that ecosystem is hugely, hugely beneficial. And then we have template documents. So this kind of goes with the creative materials, but stuff that might be more host site specific. So if you use a specific documentation for mileage or something, that can something to leave behind for the next person to look at. Or like things that you just need to be altered a little bit or can be changed a little bit. If you send the same email frequently, even like saving a version of that email that has like just like fill in the blank here can be really, really useful in having someone not have to kind of reinvent the wheel to reach out to somebody. And like an example of that is to like reach out for field trips, I sent this email out for my first field trip, and then Maggie was able to reuse most of that email for reaching out for our next field trip. So like that can be really, really useful, not having to have someone like kind of refigure out how to like word this like email or contact information stuff.
Sometimes I'm just, like, my brain is not in the space to do that type of work. I'm like, oh, I have to email this person, but, like, I just can't do it right now. And that's so helpful, too, because then you can get those tasks marked off without having to put, like, the time and energy to making yourself sound good. I feel like words are very hard for me sometimes.
And another one, so Vista specific, is how to navigate your Vista benefits or your state benefits if you're like applying for the Michigan Bridges program. So having information about that can be really useful because the next person coming in might not be, like, have never dealt with these like public service or public benefit programs before. So including some like tips on that. So like, for instance, our Vista health plan or health benefit, I had no idea how to navigate that, and I had no idea that it would take like 6 to 8 weeks for them to reimburse my hospital bills when I broke my arm. So like for next year, I'm going to leave behind information saying, hey, this benefit takes a long time. They're not necessarily going to tell you that they reimbursed you. So like,
I totally told him that also.
Yeah, I also had Zakia told me that, but like it could have been in a written form that I looked at earlier. But like it's only because Zakia is also a Vista, so she's dealt with these benefits before. If your host is coming back with only one Vista, the supervisor at that host site is not going to necessarily know how to navigate the Vista healthcare benefits or stuff, or the AmeriCorps, the child care benefits either. So like, that's really, really critical information for Vistas to learn how to like navigate correctly. And then another one, personal resources. So this can be like anything from like, hey, this is a really cool place. This place does trivia every Wednesday. If you like trivia, you can go there. I include Subway here because I go to Subway way too often because it's one that's within walking distance of our office. So like, I'm going to include like, hey, if you like Subway, there's one really close and you can walk to it and it's a pretty nice walk. And just that kind of like outside of work stuff that might make someone feel more welcome and more like integrated into their community at the start.
Rachel asked a great question. She said, will the Vistas be doing human-centered design next year, and should we include that? So this is, as all of you know, this has been our first year with the human-centered design project. So far we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and the feedback that we've gotten that hasn't been as positive are definitely like, there are actionable items to improve upon those parts of the program. So right now I would say definitely include information in that, including like any problems you've had with scheduling, any problems you've had with group dynamics. One of my groups decided they wanted like more measurables. So saying, hey, you're going to have this project, you should really include measurables from the start and have action items at the end of each meeting so that people can be productive and have the direction they need to like move forward with their project. Definitely include human-centered design in that work.
And then our final one, your contact information. So like, it can be hugely beneficial for the next person to still to reach out to you. So if this is coming, if you feel comfortable, leave your email address, leave your phone number, and make yourself open to be able to talk with them about like questions that come up. It can be really, 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 really helpful. And I know a lot of times people won't actually do it. Like I think in both of my previous years, serving the other program I was in, I left my like contact information behind, being like, hey, the next person can like contact me if they want to, and I'll explain all this stuff to them. No one ever contacted me about it, but it can be like a nice gesture, and if someone has questions, they'll know who to ask them to.
Something that Dylan and I were talking about doing yesterday was like putting a scavenger hunt in our legacy binder so that people have to look through it, and figuring out how we could make that more fun. Maybe we could like work with Maggie to figure out if there can be like a prize, or if that's mandatory for the on-site orientation checklist, if they have to come prepared for that. How can you be creative in making sure people go through that? Because I think part of the reason that people don't contact people is, one, because it's a little awkward, but helpful, and two, because half of you said that you didn't even get a legacy binder, or you didn't know where your legacy binder was. So how can we make it more accessible, and how can we make people use it next year so that they do have that information?
It's really spelled committing wrong on this slide. Pardon my spelling error. All right, so that was our presentation on sustainability and legacy binders. As I said earlier, I will send out an example legacy binder for you all to look at after this to kind of like use if you need more of a, like I'm a very visual learner, like I just see something and then do it. So I'll send that out after this. And then next we have our exciting AmeriCorps Week raffle winners. So everyone who posted that we could find, me and Zeke had to like really scorch Facebook to find people's posts.
We're gonna have to definitely put how to improve that in our legacy binder. Also, I'm real salty because I was not entered into this drawing, and I did post on Facebook. So
I think I posted most of the days, but kind of tailed off at the end. But if you posted, each post gave you one entry into our like little raffle, and then we randomly selected 3 winners from that, and so I will go over them now. So we have Ashley was our first winner, so congratulations, Ashley. I'm clapping here. Our second winner is Danielle, and then our third winner was Marisa. So your prizes will be coming with something else that should be arriving to you relatively soon, so keep an eye on the mail at your host site. And then we have a bunch of housekeeping stuff to go over. Do you want to talk about the first 2?
okay, yes, so I feel, well, 2 things. April 15th through 17th is a Small Town and Rural Development Conference if you are going, so please plan to be out of the office some of those days. April 15th is like a networking dinner-y thing. I don't think it's actually dinner. It's like hors d'oeuvres or something. So kind of like plan accordingly. We will be sending out more information on that as well as the April 18th date soon. We are finalizing some of the last things with like hotels and that stuff. And then the April 18th workforce development training in Traverse City with Networks Northwest will be right after that. So if you're already up at the Small Town and Rural Development Conference and you will be traveling the like 40 minutes to Traverse City for the field trip the next day, that is great. If you are coming up just for the 18th, that is also great. I still have not heard from many of you about whether or not you are or not attending. So please, if you have not emailed me already, tell me you are or you are not. There's like no judgment. I know that it's far away. I know you all have work to do at your site, but it's very helpful for me to know that I've heard back from everyone and then can start ordering food and getting hotels and that sort of thing.
And then April 29th through May 1st is the Building Michigan Communities Conference. I believe that was in either last week, so the week before was weekly update. And then our last field trip will be on May 3rd. So I sent an email about that last week to everybody. There's still a couple people who have not replied to that about their availability, so please, I'll probably email you later today if I have not heard back from you on that. But tell us and block that day off now. We're currently in the process of like narrowing down what our speaker is going to be talking about and how we're going to incorporate human-centered design into it. So this is going to be kind of a really cool opportunity to get everyone together again and both learn about a really cool subject as well as have time to like work on our prototypes for human-centered design. And then May 10th, QPR3 will be due, so that means there is no monthly report due for April. As a note, when will we send those emails out? A couple weeks?
Yeah, so at least my business should have your templates. I've gotten some feedback from you, from a couple of you about things that you would like updated for your next QPR. They will be launched probably the 26th. That will give you 3 weeks to actually work on the template, so you have 3 weeks to look over your template. You can start working on that. And then the 26th will give you 3 weeks to actually answer the questions in Cvent. I know that that is a few days before the term is over, but you will need to go over it with your supervisor anyway. And that just gives you a little bit of a window to work on that. So if you haven't looked at your template yet, please do and let us know so we can make those changes and that your QPR can reflect the work that you are doing.
And finally, we're entering the exciting season of recruitment. So as Maggie emailed everybody, our Vista Leader slots are currently open. So if you want to apply for that, please get those in. I'm speaking for myself here. I've really, really loved being a Vista Leader. I thought it's been like a huge professional development opportunity for myself. I would recommend it to everyone. It's been really amazing, and it's really great to work in this office. So that's my little plug for that. And then our other positions should be going up relatively soon. So if once those go up, you can either apply yourself for a second year, or if you know somebody who is looking for something to do and wants to potentially serve as a Vista, please share those with people, because I think everyone's had a really great time doing this, and you all can be a tremendous help in us getting the word out about our position. Oh, and as I said earlier, for the raffle week winners, everyone should be keeping an eye out on their host site email or host site mails, because you'll be getting something from us relatively soon there. Now, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but keep an eye out. I think that's all we have for today. So we'll hang around for a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions or concerns. And please, if you have not already, start working on that legacy binder. Start building out those tools for whoever it takes over next to be successful. And that's it. So we'll hang around for a little bit, and everyone else, you can head out.
Curtis. Just if you want to talk about anything, if you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, you are all free to grow. You are free to grow, but you're free to go also.
Oh, and sorry, I'll send out the PowerPoint presentation as well. I don't know if Suzanne is still here with the example legacy binder.